It was supposed to be a routine road trip. Liam was driving back home from a family gathering late at night, somewhere deep in the Midwest. The two-lane highway stretched for miles with nothing but darkness on either side. The GPS had been acting up all night, losing signal, and the last time he'd checked, it told him to take a turn onto an unmarked road. The asphalt transitioned to a cracked, uneven path surrounded by dense woods. Liam grew uneasy. The headlights barely pierced through the thick trees, and there were no signs of life, no cars, no houses, not even road signs. Just as he was considering turning back, a single neon sign flickered in the distance. It read, "Briar Ridge Motel." Relieved, Liam pulled into the gravel parking lot. The building was old and weathered, with paint peeling off its wooden exterior. A single light bulb flickered above the entrance, casting erratic shadows on the ground. It wasn't the Ritz, but it was better than sleeping in his car. Inside the motel, the air was stale, carrying the faint smell of mildew. The reception area was eerily quiet. A bell sat on the counter with a handwritten note. "Ring for service." Liam hesitated, but eventually tapped the bell. From the back room, a man shuffled out. He was in his late 50s, wearing a moth-eaten cardigan and a strained smile that didn't reach his eyes. His skin looked unnaturally pale, almost gray under the buzzing fluorescent light. "Just passing through?" the man asked, his voice gravelly. Liam nodded, explaining that he'd taken a wrong turn and needed a place to crash. The man didn't say much after that. He handed over a key attached to a rusty keychain with the number 5 etched on it. As Liam walked to his room, he noticed something odd. Every other room door was closed, but there were no sounds, no TVs, no murmurs of conversation, not even the sound of water running. It felt like the place was abandoned, except for him and the strange man at the front desk. Room 5 was at the far end of the building. The corridor leading to it was dimly lit, the bulbs above flickering intermittently. When Liam opened the door, the smell hit him first, a mix of damp wood and something metallic, like blood. The room itself was dated. A small TV sat on a wooden dresser, and the bed was covered in a faded floral bedspread. The window overlooked the woods, where the trees swayed in the breeze. Yet, something felt off. The closet door was slightly ajar, and Liam swore he saw movement in the shadows. He brushed it off his nerves and shut the door tightly before collapsing onto the bed. But as he closed his eyes, he heard a faint creak. His eyes shot open, heart pounding. It came again, slow, deliberate. Liam sat up, staring at the closet. The creaking stopped, replaced by a low scratching sound. Liam slowly got out of bed, heart racing. He approached the closet, every step heavier than the last. When he flung the door open, there was nothing there. Just an empty space with a single wire hanger swaying slightly. He let out a nervous laugh and turned back toward the bed. But then he saw it. Something was standing by the window. A shadowy figure barely visible watching him. Its face was obscured, but the way it tilted its head felt unnatural, almost predatory. Liam froze, unsure of what to do. The figure didn't move, didn't make a sound. And then, just as he opened his mouth to speak, it vanished. Determined to leave, Liam grabbed his keys and bolted for the door. But as he stepped outside, the world seemed wrong. The parking lot was empty, his car gone. The neon motel sign flickered erratically, casting unsettling shadows on the building. He ran to the reception desk, but it was empty. The handwritten note was still there, but the bell was broken, split clean in half. Panic set in. He tried to call for help, but his phone displayed no service. As he turned to leave, he noticed something on the counter, a faded photograph. It was the front desk clerk, standing in front of the motel. But what caught Liam's attention was the date written on the back, 1983. His heart sank. The man he had just spoken to had died decades ago. Liam sprinted down the dark road, desperate to escape. But no matter how far he ran, the motel remained in sight. It was as if he was trapped in a loop. The sound of footsteps echoed behind him. Turning his head, he saw the figure from the room, now running toward him. Its movements were jerky, almost inhuman. Liam pushed himself harder, his lungs burning, but the footsteps grew louder, closer. The figure was nearly upon him when he tripped, falling hard onto the cold asphalt. He looked up, and the last thing he saw before blacking out was its hollow, glowing eyes staring into his soul. Liam woke up in room 5, the damp smell filling his nostrils. The sunlight streamed through the window, but the terror hadn't faded. He rushed out of the room, only to find his car back in the lot, keys in the ignition. Driving away as fast as he could, he looked in the rearview mirror. The motel was gone. In its place was an empty clearing surrounded by trees. Weeks later, Liam would learn about the Briar Ridge Motel, how it burned down decades ago, killing everyone inside. They said it was cursed, doomed to reappear every so often to trap unlucky travelers. Liam had escaped, but just barely. It was supposed to be a relaxing weekend. Leah, Chris, Emma, and Tyler had been planning the trip for months. They needed a break from the city, somewhere quiet, off the beaten path, where they could unwind. That's how they ended up renting the house. It was listed on a lesser-known vacation site, advertised as a charming countryside retreat. When they pulled up to the property late Friday afternoon, they were surprised by how massive it was. The house stood tall and foreboding, its Victorian design well preserved, but the peeling paint and overgrown ivy gave it a haunting appearance. Chris joked, "Looks like the kind of place people get murdered in." Leah rolled her eyes, but even she couldn't deny the unsettling vibe. The windows seemed oddly dark, and the air around the property felt heavy, like it carried the weight of something unseen. The group shrugged it off, chalking their unease up to nerves. They carried their bags inside, stepping into a space that felt frozen in time. The house was furnished with antique chairs, faded rugs, and most unnervingly, mirrors. Lots of mirrors. Nearly every room had at least one. All framed in tarnished gold or black wood. "Creepy decor," Emma muttered, running her fingers along one of the frames. It was cold to the touch, almost unnaturally so. That night, as the group settled in, the house felt even stranger. Tyler was the first to notice something off. "Guys, is it just me? Or are these mirrors in weird spots?" he said, pointing to one mounted high up in the living room corner. It reflected an odd angle of the room, showing parts of the ceiling and nothing else. "Maybe the owner's got a thing for mirrors," Chris joked. But Leah wasn't laughing. She had been staring at her reflection in one of the mirrors by the staircase. Something about it felt wrong. Her reflection seemed slower, like it lagged a fraction of a second behind her movements. By the time they went to bed, an unspoken tension hung in the air. The old house groaned and creaked as the wind picked up outside. Emma lay in bed, staring at the mirror opposite her. She could have sworn she saw something flicker in it. A shadow moving where nothing should be. She turned on her side, trying to convince herself it was her imagination. By the second day, the group started noticing more. In the mirrors, their reflections didn't always align perfectly with their movements. Sometimes, when one of them left the room, their reflection stayed a moment longer. Other times, the mirrors showed things they couldn't see in the room itself, like the faint outline of a figure standing in the background. Leah decided to confront the weirdness head-on. She stood in front of a mirror in the upstairs hallway, waving her hand. Her reflection mirrored her movements perfectly, at first. Then, as she lowered her hand, her reflection kept it raised, smiling. in a way that made her stomach drop. She screamed, and the others came running. But by the time they arrived, the mirror showed only her normal reflection. "Are you sure you're not just tired?" Tyler asked nervously. "I know what I saw," Leah snapped. The group decided to stick together after that, but the unease only grew. That evening, the group tried to leave. They had packed their bags and piled into the car, but no matter how far they drove, they kept ending up back at the house. "It's like we're going in circles," Chris said, gripping the steering wheel tighter. Emma began crying in the back seat, and Tyler sat silently, staring out the window with a haunted look. When they finally stopped the car, they were back in the driveway. The house loomed ahead of them, its windows dark and watchful. Inside, the mirrors seemed more alive than ever. Shadows flickered across their surfaces, and faint whispers echoed through the house. The group huddled together in the living room, too terrified to move. Leah decided to confront the mirrors one last time. She grabbed a heavy candlestick and shattered one in the living room. As the glass broke, a guttural scream filled the air, and black smoke poured out of the shards. One by one, the group began smashing the mirrors, but with every broken pane, the house seemed to grow angrier. The walls shook, and an otherworldly roar echoed through the halls. Finally, they came to the largest mirror in the dining room. "Help me!" Emma screamed, her reflection banging on the glass as though it were trapped inside. Leah hesitated, but Chris swung the candlestick with all his might. The mirror shattered, and the house fell silent. In the eerie quiet, the group realized they were free. The air felt lighter, and the front door opened easily. But as they stepped outside, Tyler looked back one last time. For a split second, he saw all their reflections in the shards of broken glass, staring at him with hollow eyes. The group never spoke of that weekend again. They deleted the rental listing from their accounts and blocked the owner's contact information. But Leah couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching her. Months later, as she passed a storefront window, she glanced at her reflection. Her heart stopped. For just a moment, her reflection didn't move with her. It just smiled.